Today, great.
Okay, I think we're good to go.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for again attending this session this morning. We had a great session yesterday, and I know it's a weekend, and a lot of you have made an effort to join the speaker sessions in the morning on a weekend. So thank you so much. And I would like to take a few minutes to introduce our speaker today and what she's going to be talking about to our audience, basically our students, and definitely to the parents also, to get a little bit more awareness in cybersecurity and best practices and advice for our younger generation. So as all of us know, cyber risk is on the rise, and then there are all these different bad actors that target organizations to cause harm. And as part of these attacks and threats that we hear daily, we have a need basically to prepare our younger generation on cybersecurity awareness and how they can be safe in the growing digitally connected world that we live in. Our speaker today has a distinguished career working in very high level positions with E3 Solutions, Strategic Cyber Ventures, and currently with the Cyber Readiness Institute. Cyber Readiness Institute is CRI, and CRI basically brings the expertise of many senior executives of very big companies around the world, like MasterCard, Microsoft, ExxonMobil. They also have on their team former IBM president, Sam Palmasino, if I pronounced it right. They have Ajay Banga from MasterCard, who's the CEO, as well as Satya Nadella, also the CEO of Microsoft. Currently, CRI is run by Kirsten Todd, who also worked with the former administration. I don't want to go into any names for right now. And she's also the executive director of the Presidential Commission on Enhancing National Cybersecurity. Definitely, Cake is very proud to be a member, and we are honored that CRI gave us this opportunity to be a member among their champions. And without much delay, fellow students and parents, I'd like to introduce, it's a privilege to have Leslie Longstreet, who has taken some time to talk to our students, who is a global director for outreach. And I'll hand it over to her. Thank you, Leslie, for making the time, and the stage is all yours.
Thanks so much, Sri. It is a pleasure to meet all of you. Just want to throw out a couple of ground rules and just how this presentation is going to run. It should be really interactive. If you have any questions, feel free to either type them in the chat, or if I'm at the end of a slide, you can unmute and ask. And after each slide, or not after each slide, but after each major topic, I will pause and ask if there's any questions. So really just make this interactive and fun. Cybersecurity should not be scary. It should be a learning experience for everyone, and there's a lot of things that you can do to protect yourself and keep yourself, your family, and your businesses safe. As Sri mentioned, the Cyber Readiness Institute focuses on cybersecurity for small and medium-sized enterprises, but I'll dive into that and the background about CRI in a little bit. For now, I'm going to go off video, but I'll pop back up on towards the end. That way I can see my screen a little bit better. So I'll just go ahead and cover a couple current cybersecurity environment statistics and risks. There are 77% of children that go to online school, according to Stay Safe Online. 94% of teens do online research. It might even be more now with everyone working and going to school remote, or a lot of people. 40% of children in grades 4 through 8 have talked to a stranger online, which in theory, this could be okay. Many of us do speak to strangers online, but that is something that you as parents need to be aware of, and children need to be aware of as far as what they're actually posting online. And then just a couple stats that are not specific to kids and online usage, but small businesses. 67% of small and medium-sized businesses fail to survive a cyber breach. This may not apply to kids right now, but parents that are here, if you happen to run a small business, or if you're involved or work in a small business, this could be a pretty relevant stat for you. And then 56% of organizations suffered a breach caused by a third party. And this is from TrustWave. This is interesting, not just from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective. Think about all of the apps and all of the companies that you yourself are connected to. Anything that is not like you and your business is considered a third party. Anything that is outside of your network that you choose to allow in, whether it is like a social media platform, or if you are running a business, or if you're doing some sort of fundraiser that requires you to collect credit card information, that credit card company or app that you're using is considered a third party. So it's interesting, not just from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective. So does anybody have any questions about the current environment? I know that many of you do online school, or at least we're in a hybrid type school environment for a while, and many of you are probably doing research online for book reports and research papers and things like that. So, and I'm sure most of you have social media as well. So we'll dive into that and staying safe with those types of things on the next couple of slides.
And so now everybody is just waiting to see what emerges from these talks. What, if anything?
Okay, I think somebody is okay. If you don't have any questions, please go on mute, just so there's no background noise.
Actually, Leslie, I have a question.
Okay.
So this numbers you're showing, is it based on, it's like worldwide or just the US?
These are numbers based in the US.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
No problem. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide, which is going to be a little bit of background about the Cyber Readiness Institute. As Sri mentioned, the Cyber Readiness Institute convenes senior leaders of global companies and value chain partners. So all of these companies that are listed here, MasterCard, Principal, Microsoft, ExxonMobil, GM, PSP Partners, all of these companies provide funding to the Cyber Readiness Institute in order for us to create free resources for small and medium-sized businesses and enterprises to help secure the supply chain. So these large companies are interested in helping secure small and medium-sized enterprises because they make up so much of what these larger companies do in their supply chains. So GM has all of these smaller manufacturers and things like that that make up their, like how they're making a car or a washing machine or something along those lines. Microsoft, the little shop down the road that's selling the Microsoft computer, they care about that little shop. So at the end of the day, everything is connected, and people need to remember that whenever they're either a small business or a person that is learning about cybersecurity, and they need to know that cybersecurity for large businesses is different than cybersecurity for small businesses and for an individual. The end goal is the same, to have a safe human. It's kind of like an adult doctor versus a kid doctor. End result is the same, and end goal is the same. You want to have a healthy, happy human, but a lot of the tools you use to get to that happy, healthy human are slightly different and modified for the individual, right? Or the small business that doesn't have 10,000 people or more. So the Cyber Readiness Institute shares cybersecurity best practices and resources. You guys all have access to this. Just go to becyberready.com or the cyberreadinessinstitute.org, and you can have access to not only our programs. We've got the Cyber Readiness program, which is our flagship program, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And we also have our Cyber Leader program that is more focused on the individual, whereas the Cyber Readiness program covers cybersecurity fundamentals and is focused on creating a cybersecure organization. So as I mentioned before, we develop free content and tools to improve the cyber readiness of small and medium-sized enterprises. But again, I give this talk not just for SMBs and enterprises and businesses. I've also given this talk or a similar talk to university students, and we occasionally have groups of high school students. So this is really great, and all of our material can be used and tailored to an individual. I see a question in the chat. Oh, nope. It is just Sri posting the link. So if you guys have any questions about it, let me know. All right, so the CRI approach. A lot of people are very scared of cybersecurity, and they think that you have to have a lot of technology that goes along with cybersecurity, whether it's firewalls, VPNs, you name it. It all sounds very intimidating. But at the end of the day, 95-ish%, that's not an actual stat. It's a lot of cybersecurity can be solved by human behavior and creating policies for yourself that are focused around authentication or passwords, patching, which is software updates, phishing, don't click on links, and USB use, don't stick random things into your computer. So if you can create your own policies around these, and we'll dive into them a little bit more in detail on the next slide, create policies around these that work for you and in your lifestyle and how you are having to approach school and classes and things like that. And then also, if for some reason you do get a notification that something has been breached or something along those lines, having a plan for how you're going to attack that and protect the rest of your account is really important. And that's called an incident response and resilience plan. So basically, coming up with a plan for resetting all of your passwords if one of them gets breached, or if you happen to have a software update and or you click on a bad link and your computer gets encrypted. Having a plan for how to deal with that, even as an individual, is extremely important. And as I mentioned before, you can go to becyberready.com to access all of these resources. We don't just have our programs, we also have guides that are related to specific issues, and they're really easy to understand, straightforward, 1-page to 2-page guides that walk through at a fundamental level how to prepare for certain things. So creating a cyber ready culture does not have to be for a business. It can be for you individually, you as your family. As a family, you can drive execution for this cyber readiness culture by becoming a cyber leader. So if you are interested, or I guess the way I put it for businesses is, if there's an individual that touches all parts of the organization and is able to communicate across the board from the CEO all the way down to the janitor, that person would be an ideal cyber leader. That doesn't mean that they have to be the CEO, but as long as they're comfortable talking and gaining information from all parts of the organization. And I think that this also translates pretty well to a family. So anybody that is able to talk to their entire family and create a plan, a cyber readiness plan for their family, could be a cyber leader. Anybody that's willing to take the time to go through and learn the different risks and how to prevent those risks, and then educate the rest of their family, would be a great cyber leader. And everyone who's on this call, you're already doing the first step to that, and that's getting educated on cybersecurity. Just a note here, we have a small business advisory group that provides input. So we get our input not only from the large organizations that fund us, but also from the small business advisory group that really works day in and day out with these small businesses. And they give us a little bit of a different perspective because they either are a small business themselves, or they work, or they're an organization that is meant to support small businesses. So our program stays current and updated, and we are constantly trying to improve it. So let us know if there's anything that you see as you're going through these things that we're missing. It's always helpful to have feedback, and we're open to it. Does anybody have any questions right now before we move on? Okay.
Feel free, students. I mean, don't hesitate. Again, we're all here to learn. So if there's any questions you have, don't hesitate. The chat is there. Please feel free to ask.
Okay. All right. So as I mentioned before, our flagship program, our cyber readiness program, is focused on 4 core issues: passwords, software updates, phishing, and USBs. So I'll just go through each of these and cover a couple of stats, and then also give you a couple of best practices for these 4 issues. 99% of account compromise attacks can be prevented by multi-factor authentication, or MFA, also known as dual-factor authentication, depending on how many steps you have to take to actually get into your account. Most of you are probably pretty familiar with this. If you are logging into an app on your phone or onto your computer, and it asks you not just for your password, but also for your Face ID. That's an example of multi-factor authentication, because you need the password and you also need your Face ID, or a code to be sent to your email, and then you're allowed access to your account. 17% of people use their favorite sports team and current year as their password. This is extremely important, mainly because hackers are smart. Well, they're not always smart, but they have a lot of time on their hands, and they are willing to look at not only your passwords and try to find things like that that are easy to find online, but if they are actually interested in gaining access to your account, it will go to your social media, whether it's your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, any place that they can find out maybe where you live, what you're interested in, things you like to do with your family and things like that, and use that to try to guess your password. It's really important to keep any sort of personal identifiable information out of your password. So if you are, let's say most of you are probably from like the DC, Maryland area, and you're a huge Nationals fan, right? If you then make the national championship year, what was, I don't remember exactly which year that was. It was a couple of years ago. So let's say 2018, because I think it was somewhere around there. Let's say your password is National Champions 2018, right? It might seem like it could be a long enough password, but because you're using information that a hacker could find online, it's going to be more easily guessable. But in general, try to just keep things that you like out of your passwords. And if you are going to put them into your passwords, make sure it's not just like your favorite team and the year that they won some big event. So in general, make sure your passwords or passphrases are at least 12 to 15 characters. The way password hackers brute force your passwords, if they're longer, it takes them a lot longer to do it. Having unique characters is ideal, but it's not required. The longer the password, the harder it is for those hackers to guess it. So does anybody have any questions about passwords right now and multi-factor authentication and keeping your personal identifiable information out of your passwords?
Hey, Leslie, this is Malik. Great information. I'll just like to add one more thing, which is the answers to questions that you choose for resetting your password. Be aware of that as well, because sometimes that's also information that can easily be gleaned from your social media. And so someone can just, instead of trying to break your password, might just choose to reset it from information that's so easily available. So scramble your answers there as well.
Yes, I would agree with that completely. And one other point on that is if you make sure you have multi-factor authentication activated on your accounts, generally, if you're doing some sort of password reset, you also have to do the multi-factor, which if you, for some reason, they are able to guess those questions, at least you're getting one more step that the hacker will have to go through. If they already have access to your email, and that's where your multi-factor authentication is going through, then that's a different story. But that's why unique passwords is another important thing. Making sure your bank account passwords are different from your social media passwords, which are different from your email passwords. Keeping everything separate and unique is ideal and extremely important. On that note, and thank you for bringing this up, or the additional password comments. Password managers are something that people ask about a lot. And you just have to determine if that is something that you need. If your passwords are so long and complex that you can't remember them in a safe way, password managers are a good tool to use. There's a lot of different options out there for it. Even just saving in your browser, something that a lot of people do. Just assess your own level of risk and how much you care about it. And then choose your tools from there. In general, I think it's pretty great. So I'll move on to software updates. 60% of breaches in 2019 were linked to a vulnerability where a patch was available but not applied. If you guys don't know what patching is, that's basically doing your software update. Developers will go through their programs and their software and check for holes in it. And then when they find holes, it will release a patch to fix the hole. That's like if you're checking over your tent before you go camping to make sure that your tent doesn't have any holes in it. And if it does, if it rains, you're gonna get wet. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna patch it. So the rain stays out, your inside stays safe like it should be. Same thing with patching. An interesting point to note is that whenever a patch is available, as soon as it's released, you want to update your computer because hackers, as soon as they know that there is a vulnerability out there, will start trying to test that vulnerability. So they're going to go to the easiest targets. A lot of the ransomware attacks in the news are because of this. They saw an easy target and they went for it, whether they intended on targeting that company.
Don't come into my room.
I think that is a different.
My throat is itchy, my nose is blocked, and it's like
Okay.
I know, I'm just being safe.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Hold on.
That's okay. I'm muted. Yeah, software updates are extremely important. They just keep your devices updated and prevent, like if you were to click on a bad link that potentially was targeting a vulnerability that a patch was available for and not applied, keeps you safe from that. So best practices for keeping your software updated are to enable auto updates and then actually restart your computer or your device whenever it tells you to do that. Generally on, I want to say it's Tuesday, Microsoft releases all of their patches. They call it Patch Tuesday. So just pick a random day of the week, whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, to just double check to make sure your browsers are updated, your computer's updated, your phone is updated, all of your apps are updated. Pick one day of the week that you double check to make sure, even if like the auto update didn't push through or something along those lines, that you are keeping all of your devices updated. And that brings me to the next issue, which is phishing, because phishing is a way that people target not only software updates, but they also can target your passwords through phishing. They can gain information about you, not only through a phishing email, but also through a phishing phone call, which is called phishing, or a text message where they send you a malicious link. And if you clicked on that, they either gain access to information from you. If you had some unpatched vulnerability on your phone, it could attack that. So in general, be aware of clicking links. But I'll go through a couple of these stats right now. 91% of all cyber attacks start with a phishing email. That's a huge number. And I worked for a company that used to do penetration testing, which is basically companies would hire us to hack their company to then determine where vulnerabilities were. So a lot of times they wanted to see where the humans were failing in this penetration test. So most of the time we would send some sort of email to employees that had, it was not actually a malicious link, but it allowed us to gain access to their network. But it was something along the lines of a free pizza if you clicked on this link and you went over to the pizza shop that day, or something along those lines. Or we could send them an email that was like, hey, your boss asked you to open this attachment and make a couple changes, or something from IT potentially. We could send an email out to people saying that we needed them to reset their password immediately. Every time without fail, it only took about a day for our good hackers to gain access to these companies just by simple phishing emails. It astounded me every time. And without fail, somebody always clicked on one. So that's pretty interesting that, and it's not a surprising stat that 91% of all cyber attacks start with phishing email. As an individual, just be aware of this. Hackers will try to gain access to your social media. Most of you probably don't have bank accounts yet, but one of these days you will. But for the parents out there, just be aware of anything or any company or organization that is sending you an email to reset your password if you did not initiate that. Because that is how a lot of hackers go about gaining access to your accounts. Is it's so easy to just send you an email that looks just like the Facebook account or your Gmail account that they want access to. It's pretty easy to make like emails. And then this stat is not necessarily relevant for an individual, but 81% of companies that fell for a phishing attack was customers. This is important just because losing or having an attack basically makes you lose credibility. And if you are a small business, if you only have, I don't know, 500 customers, if you lose those 500 customers' data, they're probably not going to come back to you because you have not maintained that protection of their data, and they're going to hesitate before coming back to you because it is a pain to have your credit card information, your personal identifiable information like your address or anything like that stolen. And as an individual, this is important just because you can take into account these types of things when you're picking businesses that you work with and businesses that you choose to use. And like I mentioned before, third parties is anybody that you choose to share your information with outside of your own family unit and your own self. So just to be aware of that, keep an eye out on what information you're giving to companies too. If you don't have to give them your address, maybe don't give them your address unless it's absolutely necessary for whatever reason. So I've covered phishing, and we'll go on to USBs, which also kind of touches on all of these things. This one's
Okay, it's ready for you.
okay. So USB use, 8 out of 10 companies, employees use non-encrypted USB devices, such as free USBs from conferences. I'm not sure how many of you still use USBs. I know that in the US, most people have shifted more towards cloud-based file sharing and things like that. But outside of the US, it is still a major issue for people using USBs and not necessarily knowing exactly where they come from, and then using those to share files back and forth. Let's say you don't use USBs anymore, but you still have something that you are connecting to your device through like an HDMI cord or anything that you physically plug into your computer could put your device at risk. Even using those cell phone cords in airports and things like that, whenever you connect just through USB without the actual plug that goes into the wall, because that is, you can transfer data through those. It's important to just be aware of what you're using, number one, because you never know what is on it. And if there's any chance of data transfer, whether it's through plugging your phone into the random USB plug in the airport or connecting to public Wi-Fi, it's kind of along the same lines. You wouldn't share somebody else's fork, so why would you share somebody else's Wi-Fi? It's kind of the way I look at it. And if you are going to do that, you're going to wash things first, right? So if you have to use any sort of USB device, whether it's a USB data device, or if it's like plugging a mouse into your computer or something along those, they do sell these little data blocker devices that you can put over your USB before you put it into your computer. It's good to use just because it does turn off that data transfer. It is basically missing one of the wires that allows for data transfer. So that's one way to get around using or if you still have to use USB, is to use them. But in general, just try to avoid using them if possible.
You guys join the Google Meet, it started at 10.
It's a better way to go about file sharing and transfer. Cloud is a little bit better. But does anybody have any questions on these 4 core issues?
I think, Leslie, there was a question on the chat that came through about the USB.
Okay, I don't think I see that, but if you could read it out loud, that would be helpful.
Sure, I think it was Nandaki, you had a question about USB. Basically, I think the question was something about why don't companies provide USB storage devices that are encrypted proactively for staff to use, something along those lines.
Okay, so in general, like if a company has to use USB devices, they hopefully would provide encrypted USBs. But at the end of the day, USB should be a one-way use. So like if you are plugging it into your computer to then transfer it to a client's computer or something along those lines, you wouldn't want to then take that USB and put it back into your computer. The encryption is one thing and protecting your files is one thing, but the transfer from one device to another that is outside of your network is, in my opinion, one of the bigger issues. Keeping files safe is important, and that's where the encryption side of things comes in. But I think that the going from one device to another, and you don't necessarily know what that device that you're plugging your USB into could then put onto that USB is where I get a little bit more uncomfortable than the file sharing side of things. I hope that kind of helps answer your question.
Did that help, Nandaki, to help clarify your question, hopefully?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the class? Any students, please feel free on this 4 very core issues that Leslie has mentioned. Again, a lot of these things we tend to use our devices day in and day out. And we sometimes may forget to look upon some of these things that she's mentioned. I think Vir has a question here. Leslie, if you see it on the chat.
Yes. So phishing emails, basically you're asking how they make them like believable. It isn't really obvious. Is that kind of like what you're asking, like how hackers get really good at phishing emails and why would anybody ever click on one?
Well, yes, because like the example you gave was a free pizza. I don't know anybody who would believe that.
That's a fair point. A lot of people that are your age probably would not believe that. But if you are working in a big company or something along those lines, and your company generally does like lunch from a certain food truck or something, and they give you like a discount, let's do that instead. Like your favorite store, I don't know. Let's just use
Toys R Us.
Toys R Us, sure. And you had signed up through Toys R Us for the rewards program, and they sent you an email that said, hey, if you come in the next 4 days, you can have 20% off of your purchase if you click on this link and print out this certificate, right? Clicking on that link or opening that attachment with that coupon could be something that you might be more like willing to fall for. Does that make sense? Like they will target you based on what you're interested in. And they will generally try to make themselves look like a company that you know and trust. Why do you think Toys R Us would ever try to gain access to your account? Probably wouldn't think about that. But hackers know that you like Toys R Us because they've seen your social media or they've seen where your parents are taking you on social media. And then they're able to craft an email that is very appealing for you to want to click on a link or open an attachment or anything along those lines. It may not be asking you for a password reset, but just clicking on a link can open up a huge can of worms, whether it's a malicious website or it could potentially encrypt your files, anything along those lines. So just be aware of clicking on links and opening attachments, even if it's from a company that you know.
Also, I have another question.
Okay.
So let's say somebody sent a link to me. If I like write that link down on a piece of paper and then I copy what the piece of paper wrote and I put it into like a new tab, will I still get the virus? Like, yeah.
So that's actually a really good point. A lot of times, if it's an actual link to an actual website and you go to a new tab and type that in, that's okay. So I like that you bring that up. It's a really good tool. One other thing that you could do is instead of clicking on that link in your email, scroll over it. And then you know how when you scroll over a blue link, it shows the URL. So it would be like toysrus.com. Keep an eye out on if it's like maybe Toys R Us or something just slightly different. So I really like the idea that you have about writing things down and then typing it in. That's a really great tool. Another tool again is just scrolling over it to see if it actually looks like it's from the site before you click on it.
So just to add to what Leslie said, where definitely you bring up a good point of taking that safety measure, but also just hovering over the link, you can quickly identify any grammatical errors that is posted in that link. Like she mentioned, that Toys R Us may be spelled with two U's, or it's they misspelled, instead of it's Toys R Us, it's toysrus.us.org. So
yeah,
some of these things can be pretty obvious to us before we click that link, and these are some best techniques that we should start practicing before we click on things of this sort that you see, because sometimes we're in a hurry. Hey, I saw this deal, there's a coupon, let me quickly click on it, send it to my friends. But you being careful and not clicking on it and spreading it will definitely help create a better environment for others too. So there's one more question that came up, Leslie, 1 second here in the chat. This is from Shrikar, who is joining us from Bangalore, India. And he asks whether accessing the internet sites using the company network would affect the company's server.
It could. So if you are connected to the company server through a VPN or anything along those lines, whether you're physically there or not, next time you connect to that company server, it could cause issues if you're using or if you're visiting bad sites or anything along those lines. That's why a lot of times we suggest, and other companies and organizations suggest, keeping your personal devices and your company devices separate, just to avoid cross-contamination. But at the end of the day, if you still have your company email on your phone, your personal phone, and then you ended up clicking on a bad link or something, it still could affect the company network. I hope that helps answer your question. It really depends though, because it depends on how the company network and server is all set up, and what controls they have in place.
And just to add to that, Shrikar, companies are also, being smarter about some of these threats that they see every day, and they're trying to improve upon. Look, if somebody clicks on certain links or they get information about a lot of attacks going on, they work with like the antivirus companies, the firewall companies, which gets updates, and they help give you some extra layer of protection too. But definitely, yes, clicking on these links can pose harm to the company's network as well as some of their servers. I'm sorry, Malik, you wanted to add something?
No, yeah, I mean, just to say that, yeah, I mean, the hacker will look for the easiest way in. And if you don't have good cyber hygiene in your company, that'll be the point of breach. And then you can always laterally move and escalate privileges.
Good. One more question,
Yeah, hi.
Leslie. Go ahead.
I have a question. We'll start here. So I see that there are these private service providers which provide a VPN network for your personal use. How good or bad that is in terms of accessing those services, especially if you want to restrict website access to kids?
So free VPNs or paid for VPNs, or just VPNs in general?
Free VPNs, I would say.
Okay, so they're, in general, nothing's free. They are, if you're using a free service like a VPN service, they are collecting information on you in some way, shape, or form. Likely it's going to be like information about sites that you're visiting to then sell to ad companies, or location data to then sell to ad companies. It all ends up coming down to they have to make profit in some way, shape, or form. So just take a look at, there's a lot of different free VPN services out there. Some are better than others, and just try to do your research and see what you're comfortable with as far as what they're going to have access to and how they make their money. So yes, I think free VPNs can be useful, and restricting sites for kids and things like that is helpful. But if you don't want your information to be sold or anything along those lines, you would have to end up using a paid for service. There's some not horribly expensive ones out there as well, that if you didn't want your information sold, that you could look into. But at the end of the day, just determine what your level of risk is. If you don't really care about your ad data being sold, then there's no reason not to use one of the free services.
So on those lines, will you recommend anything which is like a basic service which should be there, or any provider which you are aware, which we can use just as a basic protection to our home network?
Yeah, so I used to use ExpressVPN and have since switched to NordVPN, not for any particular reason other than that's just what my family and I decided to do. But those are two recommendations that I could tell you to look into. But there's a lot of services out there, and you can also look to see where these servers are based and things like that. And you can find all of this online if you just take a look, and to see which companies these VPNs are selling data to as well. So just do a little bit of research. There's a lot of options out there. Nord and Express are two that I have used in the past, and they're very easy and simple to use. But again, there's a lot of options out there.
So I have.
Thank you.
And Sunit, just as Leslie mentioned, you know, your company's VPN, if there's one set up, is probably much more safer. Not trying to say that you can't use some of the other ones, but it also comes at, you know, sacrificing some amount of data, because you know, just being online in these days, people are always trying to get data. So in whichever way they can try to get some data, they will make some effort. So I think it's more of, you know, making that sort of educated decision as to what works best for me.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, that if you're going to use your company VPN to do personal stuff, which may be okay, right? I mean, checking out your bank account, doing some online shopping or something within reasonable limits, be aware that most companies now do something called break and inspect, so they will have access to all your personal data.
Correct. I mean, it's all about, you know, again, protecting the company's network. So it's a gamble that you got to take, you know. So go ahead, Leslie. I think there was one more question we have here. How do you think some of these issues will change in the next 10 years? I don't know if you have the genie lamp. Maybe you can answer this question, Leslie.
Yeah, so this is actually something that, as I mentioned before, we have the Small Business Advisory Council. We also have all of our members give us input on what their thoughts are about how the landscape is going to change over the next couple of years. Because right now, ransomware is a huge issue. What is going to be the next big ransomware? We don't really know, to be totally honest. I think that at the end of the day, all of these core 4 issues are going to be relevant. But I think USBs, as countries and as encrypted file storage that is in the cloud changes in the future, I think USBs hopefully will be less relevant, and we'll be able to focus and shift that a little bit. But in countries like, I don't know if you all were on whenever Sri mentioned at the beginning, I live about half the time in a country called Georgia, which is between Turkey and Russia. And most of the companies that I speak to over there, they all use USBs. So that is not changing outside of the US at the current moment. Some companies that are a little bit more advanced are using more encrypted cloud file storage, but USBs are still used very widely in Georgia. So I think that is one thing that I'm seeing, like, at least in the next like 2 to 3 years, potentially shifting and changing. But at the end of the day, hackers are always going to try to find the easiest, quickest path into your network and your accounts. So keeping those passwords updated, software updated, and not clicking on links is going to be key. Also enabling multi-factor authentication. I see one more question in here. That is, why would a company not apply a patch if it's available? And that is a really fantastic question. Depending on the size of the company and the size of the network, there's a couple of different reasons why a company would not apply a patch. If it's just a small company and they have 3 to 4 people, they might be just as nonchalant and potentially, I don't want to say lazy, but we're all kind of guilty of it, delaying a couple of days before you actually take the 15 minutes to restart your computer, right? It's a pain, it interrupts your workflow, but that could be one reason a small company would not apply a patch if it's available, just because they don't want to take the time out of their busy day because they want to get that next customer in and out, something along those lines. For larger companies, it can take hours to roll out updates across an entire company. So, or if it's a company that potentially has older devices that are connected to the network that are not eligible for that software update, that's another issue, but that's a whole different can of worms. So there's a few different reasons why software updates would not be applied if they're available. I hope that helps answer that question.
Actually, there was one more question about if you put a malicious site into the command for something like ping or some other command, and also why does a firewall limits our speed?
Okay.
If you can take that, or let me know if Malik and I can help. Yeah, we can do
Yeah,
that.
if you are more familiar with that than I am, go for it.
Malik, can you help me out here?
So the first one was if you click on a ping malicious site.
Yes.
So technically it shouldn't matter because the protocol that's used for ping is a very rudimentary protocol. But that tells both sides that the other side is alive. So that tells your hacker side that your site is a live site, so they can always attack it later. On the second question was, why do firewalls slow down traffic? Because they're inspecting traffic. So think of an inspector who is looking at the packets, trying to see if they are good or not. That takes time. That's called inline inspection. And that is why it takes longer.
Good. We'll let you continue, Leslie. Sorry, bunch of
Okay, no
questions.
worries. I am, since we're getting kind of close to the end, I'm going to go ahead and click through the next couple of slides and just cover high level what these are. This slide pretty much just reviews what we just talked about, the authentication, patching, phishing, USB use, and then creating an incident response plan for all of those issues. I'm going to quickly go through this. Kind of just runs over the cyber readiness program, getting started, prepare your organization or your household, select a cyber readiness leader, whether that is one of your kids, or if you are a kid and you want to educate your family on cybersecurity, you could be the cyber readiness leader. In this program, you would learn about authentication, patching, phishing, and USB use, learn how to prioritize what to protect, establish baseline metrics, and then you can create templates for either your individual self or your family and develop an incident response plan from these templates. The rollout is kind of, it would be odd to do if you're only doing this for yourself, but making sure that you know why you're doing this and that you stick to what you're creating in these templates and policy plans. And then measuring success in a month after you've gone through this program, you could go through again and see if you actually are more prepared than you were initially. So this program, again, is open for anybody to take. It's free. Go through and just, as long as you're going through realizing that this was created for small and medium-sized businesses, I think that you can still get a lot of value out of it, even if you're doing it as an individual. And Sri will have some updates on a certification towards the end of this coming week. So he'll have some updates with you or for you around a certification that is specific to take in the cyber readiness program. So just keep an eye and ear out for that towards the end of this coming week. Human behavior is the key to security. Cyber readiness is about people and their behavior. So create goals for yourself and your family. Embed cyber readiness into your daily life. Develop good cyber habits. Don't click on links. Remember to update that password. Change it every now and then. Make sure it doesn't have your favorite sports team or your pet's name in it. Make your policies practical. If you create these crazy policies that you're trying to follow, like you have to reset your password every other week, you're never going to keep up with that. So make sure they're doable and you can keep up with the policies that you're setting for yourself. Again, avoid using personal identifiable information in your passwords, sharing that type of thing online. Be aware of who you're communicating with and think about what you're posting. Just be aware that you may not know exactly who's on the other side of that chat, or if you're playing World of Warcraft, you may not know who that guy is that you're talking to. Just remember all of those things as you're going through and you're playing online. I'm gonna stop here because I see another question in the chat, and there was one question earlier that I figured I could answer towards the end, but it was why I got into cybersecurity. If you guys are interested in hearing about that, I'm happy to cover that because it was kind of a roundabout way. But I can do that in a minute if nobody has any other questions.
Any questions, students, parents, for Leslie? Okay, so what I'll do is have Mr. Malik give it's a couple minutes, I mean, maybe a minute or so of a closing remark, and we'll hear from Leslie. And before she ends the session, we'll give her a round of applause. So Malik, anything for closing remarks, sir?
Hey,
Oh,
Sri, can I have a question?
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just one question. I guess a lot of data is not within our purview, in the sense that like there is a lot of data that MCPS and whatever apps that they choose. So they collect apps on our kids and stuff. So are there any, does the CRI also talk about some best practices that we can use just to check what data is shared, and how can we basically at least have idea of what is shared and have a say in what can be or what cannot be shared?
So you're asking about like app security and like privacy on apps? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Sort of, yes. And in the sense, I think we use some apps which are completely administered by MCPS, and there might be some settings or some things where we need to be aware of, saying, okay, go and at least do these few things so that your kids' data is safe.
Yeah, so CRI currently does not have anything that addresses that specifically, but I think that one of our partner organizations, the Global Cyber Alliance, does have some tools that are more along those lines. I can put that link in the chat, or at least the name of it. I will do that right now. They have a little bit, or a few tools that are a little bit different than CRI, which is what makes them a really great partner. But I would look into that, and they've got a whole toolkit. And if for some reason that does not answer your question, feel free to reach out to me after this, and I can see if I can find a tool or a resource that can help you.
Just to add, I had looked into it, and MCPS does have a document on their website that documents what data they're sharing with whom and what data stays anonymous.
And we can send that link to the parents. Yeah, we can do that. Thank you, Sudhin, for bringing that up, and thanks, Leslie. So I think there's one question we have, which I don't want to miss out, from Anant. Hello, Ananya. I don't know if she dropped out.
Okay. And then Sri, there was one other question that I had, and I'll just cover it very briefly, just because I think it's important for kids to know that you don't have to like study cybersecurity to get into it. There's a lot of different avenues of cybersecurity. A lot of people come from history backgrounds and they do really well in cybersecurity. I personally majored in chemistry in college. I thought I was going to go be a veterinarian, but then I, through a couple of different jobs, landed in cybersecurity just through just the way the career ended up working out. And I found it very interesting, and I ended up just staying because I liked it a lot. And there's a lot of opportunity for growth in the cybersecurity field. And there's really any direction you decide to go in school, whether it's history or politics, or hard sciences, computer science, you name it. There's space for a lot of different roles and skills in the cybersecurity world.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. So I'll give a few, probably a minute to Malik, and we'll basically wrap it up. Malik.
Yeah, thanks, Sri. Leslie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and educate our cohort here. It was really, eye-opening and interesting to hear you talk to some of the same themes that we've also covered in class. So I think definitely you reinforced it, and the examples really brought it home as things that not only affect kids, but also the same issues that small and medium companies as well as large companies are grappling with. Really appreciate the service you're doing for the larger good of the industry and the population as such. We hope we can stay in contact and gain from your institute as well. So thanks so much, and I'll hand it back to you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you
So just Leslie, we on behalf of the students and parents definitely want to thank you for talking to us today on a Sunday. You could be doing better things. Same for our students and parents, but really thank all of us, and for taking the time to share what you have put together with CRI's approach, and how we as parents and students and can be sort of looking at practicing some of this best practices, habits you have shown us to have a safer cyber world. Whether it's for us, our friends we can educate, it will go a long way. So definitely thank you so much, Leslie, and for the rest of the CRI team for helping us with this, and with our journey that we're continuing with Malik and myself. Any questions for Leslie before she has her closing remarks, and we can end today's session? I guess not. Leslie, go ahead.
Okay, thank you guys so much for inviting me to come talk to you all today. If you guys have any questions about CRI, our resources, or if there's anything that you notice that we're missing, please let us know. And if you, again, have any just one-off questions or anything like that, my email is here. I'll send this slide deck over to Sri to send out to all of you if you're interested in taking a look at it. But again, just want to reiterate that all of our resources are totally free to use. Go check them out. Share them with your parents, your friends, your family, you name it. They're all useful, and it's very straightforward and fundamental cybersecurity. And if you have any questions about more technical things, also feel free to reach out. Even if we as the Cyber Readiness Institute can't help you, we have a lot of partners and other organizations that can. And thank you guys so much for
So if we
the
can
invite.
just unmute everyone, just so we can give a round of applause to Leslie, that'll be great. I know we're not in person, Leslie, but hopefully, maybe someday soon.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Have a good rest of the
Bye-bye.
Sunday. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
I think we're good, Leslie.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and I'll call you in a few minutes.
Sounds
Or-
good. Thanks.
Okay, take care. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.